We probably all want to ride our bikes a little bit faster, don't we? But we don't all necessarily want to ride harder.
Oh no, definitely not. So can you get faster on your bike without actually getting any fitter? Well, of course you can. That is exactly what we are going to be telling you in this video. But we are not going to be preaching the obvious things like getting more air or indeed what supplements you might want to consider taking. No, today we're getting a bit smarter.
Oh, that's right. We are going to be talking about wind direction, air pressure, momentum, drivetrain friction, chainline, even the time of day at which you'll be at your best. All sorts of ways to raise the speed at which you ride your steed. First though, we're going to have a discussion about tyre pressure.
Oh, it's awful.
Now, if you're really feeling the pressure, it might not just be your head. It could be that you've been just a little bit too overzealous with your track pump. Now, having rock hard tyres might be fast on the smooth boards of a velodrome, but how many roads do you know that are that smooth? Not many, particularly here in the UK. Higher pressure feels faster, but it actually isn't. So, lowering your tyre pressure could not only give you more comfort, but more speed as well. Now, recent studies have shown that rolling resistance has two components, and their effects are independent of each other. Firstly, hysteretic losses, the loss of energy through heat, which is produced by the deformation and recovery of your tyres, and then suspension losses. These suspension losses occur on imperfect road surfaces, Paris-Roubaix being a real prime example. Now, lowering your tyre pressure means that your tyres can deform, roll over and absorb the cobbles rather than just bounce off them. The pros in Paris-Roubaix will run their 30C tyres at around 4 bar, or only 60 psi. These recent studies have shown that suspension losses on ordinary roads are really very significant at tyre pressures that are commonly used, i.e. 100 to 120 psi. So, reducing your pressure, if not to quite that extreme, will effectively do the same thing for your normal roads. So your tyres will absorb the bumps and blemishes on the road rather than bouncing over them. Faster, more comfortable and free. Now, unfortunately, we can't tell you what your optimal tyre pressure will be. That will depend on your weight, your size, and also the road surface that you happen to be riding on. But also, the benefit of having decreased tyre pressure is added grip when cornering.
Which brings us nicely onto our next point. Momentum is very much your friend. The more speed you can keep, the faster you are going to go for exactly the same effort. Now, that might be having more speed through corners because you've got more grip, or it might also come into play as you start a climb.
That's right, the faster you go into a climb, the faster you will go up it for the same effort. The shorter the climb, the more impact it will have. Now, of course, there is a trade-off. If you lose loads of energy getting to the bottom of the climb, you will have less power at your disposal as you go up it. But there is also a sneaky trick here.
You're right, Si, there is a trick for this. This was something I observed whilst doing a sportive event last year, because I ended up in a group of about 30 or 40 riders. Obviously, I was kind of hovering towards the back, saving energy.
Old habits die hard.
My observation was that as you went from a descent onto a steep climb, a lot of the riders towards the back of the group weren't giving themselves any space, and so they were having to brake as the riders at the front slowed on the climb. I was a little bit sneaky, gave myself some room on the side, and what that means is that you don't need to use your brakes, and all that momentum and speed that you have effectively carries you from the back of the group almost to the front. Not on the front, obviously, you don't want to actually take the wind.
No, old habits die hard. Now, it might sound a little bit like cheating, but it's not. It's totally fair game. It's just an intelligent use of your momentum.
Another observation I had at that very same sportive event was that there were a few riders who weren't aware of which direction the wind was coming from. So you quickly learn as a new cyclist that there is a massive advantage of slipstreaming behind the rider in front of you. However, far fewer people seem to learn that that energy saving sweet spot changes position when the wind starts coming from the side.
So if the wind is coming from the left, you need to be sat just off to the right of the rider in front. And vice versa. If the wind is coming from the right, you need to be sat just off to the left of that rider. Now, your exact position relative to them does depend on things like the wind angle, your speed, and also the wind speed. Because you might find that in really strong crosswinds, you actually need to be overlapping the rider in front quite significantly.
Yeah, there's no numerical formula to this as far as we are aware, but through trial and error, you should be able to find that sweet spot in crosswinds, and it is well worth doing because it'll save you a whole heap of energy that you can use to go faster later on.
Do you know why the likes of Tony Martin and Tom Dumoulin have 58-tooth chainrings on their TT bikes? And it's not just because they produce far more power than us mere mortals. No, that's only part of the story. The other thing is that running this humongous dinner plate of a chainring means they can spend more of their time on slightly bigger cogs on the rear cassette. And it also means their chainline is far straighter. And that in turn means less drivetrain friction. Now, it's not a big difference, but it's a power saving nonetheless, so more free speed. So for us mere mortals, it could mean that it's best to run a compact on the front rather than cross-chaining on a 53, meaning we can go faster. Happy days. On a similar subject, a clean drivetrain is a faster one. Now, drivetrain friction losses through dirt or an overstretched chain are particularly significant. And not only that, but the lube you use can make a difference as well. In fact, did you know that a clean, unlubricated chain is far more efficient than an over-lubricated chain? Well, neither did I, but apparently it is. And then there are some lubes that are far faster than others in terms of reduced drivetrain friction. Unfortunately though, a number of companies claim theirs are the fastest and have data to back up their claims. So in some ways, we're none the wiser, which is just a little bit confusing. So it's really worth doing some research if you're looking for those marginal gains. If you're feeling under pressure, that might just be your head. But weather conditions can significantly slow you down as well. Now, wind and rain, they're the obvious ones, but did you know that air pressure can have a big impact as well? Many of you will know that we're able to ride faster at high altitude, even though we're unable to produce as much power. But less obvious is that differing air pressures and temperatures are an influence on your speed. Small daily changes in barometric pressure and temperature won't make too much of a difference at all. But if you're riding after a heavy thunderstorm in midsummer, for example, it can make a significant difference in the air pressure. How much? Well, up to 3% gain in speed for the same power. Now, it's not just the weather, but also time that can influence your speed. Researchers in Brazil have found an improvement of almost 7% when a fixed distance laboratory test was done in the evening rather than in the morning. Admittedly, that improvement was over just 1 kilometre, but this evidence backed up other previous studies, so we can safely say that you go faster if you ride in the evening. Why, I hear you ask? They don't know the exact reason, and neither do I. But next time we go for a Strava KOM, it'll be in a summer evening after a storm. Now, it's early in the morning, the air pressure is quite high, my tyres are just a little bit too hard, my drivetrain is really filthy, and to be perfectly honest with you, I think I've used the wrong lube as well. I might as well just go to calf. Now, for another video on speed, how to go fast for free, how about clicking just down here? And don't forget to like and share.